Hi, welcome to Cooking with Dad. I'm Dad, and I'm here today to make vegetable beef soup. Um, Actually, I'm here to make vegetable soup and beef soup. It's something that I learned from my dad. It's a hack, really. It's not really I mean, it's a recipe, sort of, but it's really more of a vegetable soup hack. And I'm going to show sort of how to make it either vegetable or vegetable beef. My vegetarian is off at college, and I'm kind of making this for her. And but my other daughter is not a vegetarian, and neither are we. So we like it with the meat. So you can make it either way you want to make it. But vegetable beef soup that I learned from my dad. Hope you enjoy it. Here we go. I'm doing this a little different today because, as I will show you, my little thing that I used to hang around my neck, it broke, and I got to get a new one. So we're going to be doing this a little different today. But the main thing to make this vegetable soup, really, instead of using a broth base, which I advocate for a lot of soups, this one's not broth based. This is tomato juice based, and you can get just the cheap tomato juice, but that really becomes the base of the soup, the liquid of the soup. The other main ingredient, this is what the hack is home style version veg-all. You know what you're going to see is this is large cut vegetables. There's carrots and there's celery and there's potatoes and there's corn and there's peas and there's all kinds of things in there. Now, in addition to that, I like to also add some beans. It could be red beans, black beans, white beans, garbanzo beans, just another kind of bean, just to kind of bean it up a little bit. Also add a little more protein to it, and I kind of like the texture. If you don't like beans, don't add beans. I also like to add tomatoes, the actual just some diced tomatoes. This is stuff I got from Costco. Again, nothing's real fancy, none of it. But if there's another kind of vegetable that you like, feel free to add it. The thing is that, you know, these are already cooked. So if it's an uncooked vegetable, you might need to cook it because everything here is already cooked. Basically, all you're doing is warming up. The only thing I'm actually going to be cooking is going to be a onion and a little bit of garlic with it, and that's it, kind of it. And I will be cooking the meat, but that's separate from this. Right now, I'm going to focus on the soup. Now, I know I've showed you how to cook a onion a million times, how to cut the ends off, how to take the skin off. I'm going to turn this into a fairly small dice, nothing too big. Think about what's going to be coming out of this is going to be about this size. So I kind of want that size dice of onion. So whenever you're cooking something that's going to be mixed together, unless you want it to stand out, you kind of want everything to be about the same size. This pasta that I'm using, I've already used them before, but this is called ditalini, and you'll be able to see that it's tiny, and these will swell, but when they swell, they'll be about this big around. But that's the kind of pasta that I'm going to be using, and it's not a lot of it. It's really just there as kind of an accent, just to accentuate the soup. But I think it makes it really good. So the onion, as per usual, I cut it in half. I cut transverse this way, not all the way through. Be careful, watch your fingers. Cut straight down about the size that I want the dices to be. I hope this is coming on camera because I'm not used to doing it this way. And then cut all the way through it. And then when you get to the ends, this is a little bit weird. I'm going to discard that. And cut through it this way, turn it, cut the other way. And there you go. There's half the onion, but I'm going to do the whole onion. Now, by the way, when you're doing this, you need to go ahead and have your pot warming up, which I've already got my pot warming up. And I'll throw this in there in just a minute. Now, another thing you're going to notice is I have, I'm not using the squeezed garlic. Instead, I'm using the larger version of garlic, and I'm going to use about a tablespoon of that in it. So I'm going to put that in the pot with the garlic, and I'm trying to figure out how to do this and grab the phone too. So here we go. Put this in there and stir it in. Now what you're going to see is that the onions are already starting to kind of soften up and to loosen up, and I don't have to get them completely translucent. I just kind of want to give them a bit of a head start. Now the next thing I'm going to do, well, I guess the next thing I'm going to do is I've opened up the can of Veg-All. Again, home style Veg-All. Now you'll see that these are more chunky. Like everything in here is a little chunkier. It's kind of perfect for soup size. But you can see carrots and celery and peas and potatoes and that kind of stuff. The other thing too is I'm not draining the juice from it. I'm going to leave the juice in there. I'm also, hold on a minute. I'm going to use a can of tomato juice, like I said. Now, you've probably seen these before. You may or may not have used this, girls. I'm not sure. I know you've seen this part where you can open a bottle. But most bottles, you don't need this anymore. But the other end, the pointy end, is meant so that you put this under the lip. This is old school. You open it up. Now, you could do that, but it's going to gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. So what you want to do is you want to let a little air hole in on the other side. And that's going to allow you to pour it in. Everything else is a bit of a flip top. I think my onions are just about ready. So I'm going to pour everything in there and show you what it looks like. All right, so you can see here, I'm trying to hold the camera as I'm doing this a little differently, how everything is a little bit bigger, a little chunkier in there. Also, I did not drain the beans. I did not drain the Veg-All. I just poured all of it because I want that juice in here because it's going to add to the flavor of the soup. And then I'm just going to add the can. See, I've got 2 holes here. And see what happens when you pour it with 2 holes? I'm in my own light here. But this pours out a lot easier. And we're almost done. I'm going to add some black pepper. I'm going to add some spices or some herbs. And we're going to get this good and warm. I'm going to add the pasta once it starts bubbling. And honestly, it's easy soup. Okay, now I'm going to add some Italian seasoning. Now, Italian seasoning is really, it's thyme, basil, it's oregano, probably some marjoram is in there. It's just a dried herb thing. I'm going to add, I'm not sure if you can see that or not, I'm going to add about a tablespoon. Okay, about a tablespoon, maybe a little bit more than that. About that much of the seasoning to the soup. And stir it up. Next, I'm going to add some Worcestershire sauce. I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. Okay, so now I am just going to stir this thing up. You can probably hear my meat thawing out over there. I'm just going to stir this up, and I am going to get this until it starts to bubble, starts to boil a little bit. But you can start to see all of the little pieces of the soup here. Again, anything you like to add, if you want more peas, different types of beans, cabbage is also pretty good you can put in here. There's a variety of things you can put in here to make it really tasty. Anything you like. But that really is mostly it. There's one other little trick that I failed to mention that I will talk about in just a second. Okay, now I'm going to work on the meat for just a minute. This is sort of a separate thing. With the meat, I'm going to also add a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. I'm going to add some black pepper. And then one thing that I did not mention earlier, but I'm going to add some steak seasoning. Now, this is stuff that I really like, something my wife got me for Christmas, and we liked it so much we've ordered a couple more. But honestly, it could be any kind of steak seasoning, any kind of McCormick seasoning. It's just something that kind of gives it a little bit more of a meaty flavor. And then what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cooking it in the pressure cooker. I've already got it kind of cooking a little bit here now. I'm going to add the, if I get the top off here, I'm going to add probably maybe a tablespoon of steak seasoning. And then I'm also going to add just a few shakes of Worcestershire. Now I'm using, I mean, you can get the Lea & Perrins. I often do, but you know, I found that even generic Worcestershire is pretty good because you're usually using it to kind of cook in stuff, and it actually works pretty good. Now, I'm going to be pressure cooking this, so you also need some liquid for the pressure to build up. I am going to use a sort of a leftover. We have a little bit of wine left in this, so I'm going to use a little bit of this wine. and it's just going to richen the flavor. But you could use beer. You could even use water, honestly. You could use almost any kind of liquid. Let's have this left over, so I'm going to use it. So use that's about a cup or 3/4 of a cup of wine. And then that's it. Put the lid on, let her cook. Now, once you put your crock pot lid on, you're going to want to make sure that you close this thing, and then I've got it set on 2. You'll see here, sort of the most pressurized setting. Now, if you it already worked. Okay, see this little red dot? This means that there's like a little valve there, and there's enough pressure that once that valve comes up, what that does is it locks this handle so that you can't accidentally open it and boom, blow up the kitchen. But it also allows this pressure to start to build up. Now, once this starts to steam, once it starts to steam on the number 2, I'm going to probably cook it for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to try it at 15 minutes and see how it goes. It's probably going to be tender enough. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make this fork tender so that you're not having to chew on the meat. It just comes really tender and very flavorful. Now I've cut off the heat and I'm stirring everything in, and I'm just going to let that sit for about 8 to 10 minutes. I'm going to let that pasta cook up really well, and really you're ready to serve. In the meantime, I'm going to cook some cornbread. I'm also waiting for the meat to cook. You can probably hear that in the background. That will add in separately, but if you're just making vegetable soup, you're pretty much done. Okay, one thing you're going to notice is I did not add any salt or pepper to this. I'm going to add some pepper to it. It's about maybe a teaspoon, maybe a little bit more of a teaspoon of fine ground black pepper. I feel like it needs the extra pepper. My oldest daughter does not like the coarse ground pepper because it gets stuck in the teeth, understandably, but we really love the pepper in our family. And that real pepperiness adds a lot to it. If I know it's just going to be us and no one else that really doesn't like heat, also we'll add a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, not Worcestershire, but some hot sauce to it, and it makes it really fantastic. But for now, we're just kind of waiting on that pasta to cook, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's served up. In fact, I'll show you what it looks like when we add the meat, and I'll also show you what it looks like when it's served up. Some cornbread. Okay, release the valve here, so it's just the last bit of steam that's coming out of it. Time has expired. Cooked it for about a little more than 15 minutes. Oh, there it goes. The little red dot went away. So now I can unlock it. I can actually take the top off. And take a look at there we go. Ooh, steaming everything up. And there's our meat. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spoon that into the meat. I'm not going to put the juice in, but I'm going to spoon that into the soup here, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, what you're going to see here is I just want to take a little piece to kind of show you. I'm going to take the dull end of the knife. You're going to see I'm just going to be able to tear this meat apart. That's how tender it is. I want it to be tender like that. I don't want it to be chewy. That's why we do the pressure cooker. And now we just stir it in. There we go. Now, one thing you'll notice is I did not add any salt to this. I did not add any salt to this dish. The tomato juice is going to be pretty salty already, and so I think the veg-all is a little bit like seasoned as well, and the Worcestershire is going to add a fair amount of salt. You're probably not going to need salt, but if you find that you do, if you taste it, if you like to need a little salt, add a little bit to it. It's easier to put it in when you need it as opposed to because you can't take it out once you have. So I'm going to plate it up and show you what it looks like.